Today we're looking at Serial Experiments Lain because this anime is schizophrenic in every sense of the word. Lain is an anime about a girl who suddenly gets into computers and then wacky stuff happens to her. She doesn't quite know the difference between reality and her own imagination. Lines are blurred between the digital and the real, hence schizophrenia. Though this anime also provides a good sense of where our society is at, and I think it's good as Christians to be able to watch media like this, not necessarily accepting the philosophy which is propagated by such media, and then we think about it and talk about it and discuss how it fits into our walk with Christ, which is exactly what I'm going to do in this video. Just reading through some of the reviews on my anime list, there's a ton of people singing its praises and touting how it was absolutely life-changing upon watching, though there's also all the other negative reviews quickly summarized by a simple "I don't guess it." And that's okay, this anime is not for everyone, and it is insane that the ideas promoted by this show through its mini lectures, which happen throughout, make way more sense than the actual plot of the show, but I still want to talk about it nonetheless, because as I said at the start, this anime is schizophrenic, and it is a reflection of the society we live in, which is itself schizophrenic. And it is for that reason that while I disagree with some of its conclusions, I still think Serial Experiments Lain is a beautiful anime. Spoilers ahead, by the way, because we're delving quite deeply into the central themes of this anime. The overarching one, I want to say, is this question of what reality is, especially in context of using the internet in the digital age that we are all operating in, living in, breathing in. How do we know what is real and what is not? And I don't mean that in the libtard sense where we then should advocate for censorship and disinformation laws. I mean that in a very serious, tangible sense. When we look at the news or talk to people on social media or watch a video about an event, it's a good question to ask oneself, which is, how do we know that what we're consuming is real? We are met in the first episode with Lain, who is offline, unconnected, completely technologically illiterate. Her world is effectively static, nothing much changing, very entrenched in routine, and she possesses a certainty that her experience is real, her family is real, sister is real, mom and dad are real, school is real, friends are real, her teacher is real. Yet this changes quite rapidly, and very quickly for Lain, she gets a new gaming PC, which is very cool, and with her newfound experience of technology, she continues upgrading it more and more in order to really immerse herself into the online world. And what happens next is that she is exposed to a continuous and profuse torrent of information. This is kind of my interpretation coming in because it is vague in terms of what Lain is actually doing on the internet, but it's safe to say that she's researching a lot. She's talking to online people a lot. In the same way a lot of people consume information today through social media, web articles, etc., etc. Lain is just having all of this information flow right through her head, which means it's no surprise that she can't quite tell what's real and what's not. The recent debacle and fallout surrounding South Korea and its president hereby declaring martial law was an incredible cultural moment to observe, because for every single one of us, this doesn't matter to us. Of course, you can argue that there are wide-reaching geopolitical ramifications of South Korean political instability that will influence US foreign policy, influence North and South relations, etc., blah 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 blah. But when I returned to the real world and just jokingly mentioned it to my group of friends, it was as if the event never occurred. It was as if the event never happened at all. It was still cool to see literally everyone react to it, not only on the political commentary side of the internet, but also see Ruslan and Asmongold cover it on their streams. In the online world, it did happen, right? But this declaration of martial law, I could argue, solely exists in the online world enough that it could be argued that it actually didn't happen at all. This is absolutely central to Serial Experiments Lain, where she doesn't touch grass long enough for which the boundary between the real and the digital, her online friends and her real friends, how she is influencing the real world. I don't think we, and I say we as people who are terminally online, can't distinguish that difference, because in the real world, this event never happened. Yoon Suk-yeol never declared martial law. Yoon Suk-yeol isn't even a person in the mind of people in the real world, yet Yoon Suk-yeol exists in the mind of the terminally online. And even though South Korea is a country physically far away from us, those of us online live as if we have experienced this event and as if we were a part of this story all along. The commentary of Serial Experiments Lain and its commentary on reality and the digital is fascinating because we are currently experiencing what Lain is also experiencing. She's diving into obscure events. Her experience in the digital world is reflecting upon the real. So I think for us as Christians, as we watch this anime, I think we should also be very self-conscious about wanting to remain in reality as much as possible. What is a Christian to do in a world where those boundaries are being shifted? And I think it is a very simple answer, because all we have to do is touch grass. As much as I enjoy that community that we have online here on this channel and on Discord and on Twitter, I think it's okay to live and exist in an online community. I like the fact that I can talk to people online about anime, and then when I go chat to my real life friends, we talk about life we're all experiencing together, and I think that's just the mindset we have to adopt. Online community should not be treated by the Christian as something to be seriously considered as a replacement for a real-life community, but online community as working as a supplement or addition to the real world. Which I want to hear your thoughts in the comments as well, because I want to hear how you guys navigate these boundaries between the real and the digital, because for me, I go full-on meta-modernist with a self-awareness that the digital world may not be real, but I'm going to treat it in tandem with the real world as if it were, and I love that self-awareness that my meta-modernism can bring with that, and I can have the confidence to determine what is real or not, because I'm also a Christian and I have a relationship with Jesus who tells me that he's never going to let me go from his grasp. So of course it's not a perfect answer or solution to our conundrum here, but I should think as Christians we should still have that confidence to operate in the real world and online with confidence that we know what is true because God is still with us. Which is a good transition into the next section of the video. As I look at some of the other reviews of this anime and of course its treatment of religion and God, I want to remind you, dear viewer, that the lens I've been using to interpret Serial Experiments Lain is of course through a Christian worldview, which means I have bias and probably a different conclusion to some of our atheist friends, because the conclusion one can come to after watching this show is that God is dead, not in the Nietzschean sense, but in the very postmodern sense where you decide to become God. Lain is a deeply disturbed girl. She genuinely believes she is God, and as a result she acts in a manner consistent with that belief. She waltzes around with a heck of a lot of arrogance. She becomes more and more conceited. She has a facade of wanting what's best for her friends, family, and everyone around her, but she also becomes incredibly selfish herself. She acts like a god. She disregards society. She disregards people and acts as if she were powerful and acts as if she were alone, that each of her actions don't have disastrous consequences for the people around her. I think that's the great tragedy about Lain, that she's under the assumption that the world revolves around her when in reality it does not. Yes, in her reality, in her personal experience, she is the god who controls everything. But of course, anyone can come to the conclusion very easily, like, trust me, you can do this yourself, that you are not the center of the universe. You are not God. That is the great tragedy of secular culture. All of our society, from the economy to political systems to institutions to our places of work, places of education, to our friends, to our family, everything is built to work because we place our faith, we place our trust in each of these things. We experience things, we corroborate it with others, and then we determine that they are true. Coming back to South Korea, we know that Yoon Suk-yeol is a person who exists, who is the president of South Korea and did indeed declare martial law, because we place our faith in cameras and microphones to accurately capture the press conference. We place faith in journalists that they are reporting truthfully. We place faith in translators to ensure that the message is conveyed to us accurately. We place faith in the internet that the message wasn't somehow scrambled up as it was sent through its various servers. So this whole worldview, which says you can only trust yourself and your own experience of reality, is not only incredibly selfish and arrogant, but it is also deeply radical because it contradicts every notion for which our whole society is built on. And we can see that effect on Lain. She's a girl who's confused. She's a girl who can't tell what's right or wrong. She's a girl who can't tell what's real. She's a girl who can't tell what's true. There's a certain comfort that Christ brings to the individual because we don't get to be God. And that sentiment is certainly so countercultural and contradictory to individualistic narratives. But that's why I hold such a comfort in that. There's a peace one has when one places their faith in God because we know He's in control. and we simply follow where he's leading us. There's an incredible Ghanaian woman of faith at our church who I regularly chat to because she's got that amazing faith where she lacks worry, she lacks anxiety, and there's a joy that emanates from her because she knows full well that God's in control. Of course, I'm not saying that you shouldn't critically think. Of course, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be knowledgeable of the world around you, but because we're not God, because we don't get to determine what reality is, we as Christians really ought to conduct ourselves in a manner which is consistent with our faith, because ours is a faith which is deeply involved in every aspect of society. But it's not out of fear or anger that we do what we do. It is out of compassion, it is with a sense of peace, it's done with great confidence, and it's out of love. It's because we know that the hope that we have in Christ is true, is real, and that hope ought to be spread, particularly to the troubled such as Lain. I leave that to you today in our discussion of Serial Experiments Lain, because our society, just as Lain is deeply, deeply troubled and confused over the nature of reality itself, which ought to inspire us as Christians to go out to a world which is broken and in need of Christ.